Greetings, you've landed at the VUC, IP Communications and VoIP community. We would like to thank Simwood.com for their support. Simwood can turn you as a developer into a telco. Our hosted PBX is from OnSIP.com. You can go to GetOnSIP.com for a URL people can click to call you. We've been privileged over the last 5 years to be using the best conference bridge on the planet. Yes, I'm talking about ZipDX.com, full color, full featured, full HD conference bridge. Our website, vuc.me on the webs, hosted by Bluehost.com. And our worldwide local rate dial-ins are from Voxbone.com. Thank you, Michael, for that intro. By the way, it's 5:59, bro. People are wondering, okay. This is VUC 559, 18th of September, 2015. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, hopefully, Michael, you've got the Astricon slide ready, which is right here. October 13th to 15th in Orlando, Florida, ladies and gentlemen, where you're going to meet Fred, a very long-time friend of ours, and his lovely wife. They'll be there. David Duffett will be there. I think Tim Panton might be there. He's not sure, but he's kind of nodding his head. Anyway, do we have a, is there a TAD hack thing to talk about?
No, no TAD hack, I'm afraid.
Well, there is.
No, I mean, it's just vocal. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, it's on the 3rd and 4th of October in Chicago at the Illinois Institute of Technology. This particular one is focusing more on the Internet of Things, so it should be interesting.
As opposed to the Internet of Stings. Okay.
And immediately after that, there's the IIT have a conference on real-time communication, which is a sort of slightly more academic follow-up to the hackathon, or you could see it the other way around, that the hackathon is a less academic lead into it. And I'm speaking at that.
That would be one very good reason to go. And all of that ties in together with Astricon afterwards. Our guest today, Bill Simon. Bill, hello.
Good afternoon.
Happy to have you. Yeah, you're a little... I should explain, if anybody's watching the video, that Bill is a little bit out of sync because we had some problems earlier. But he's here, and he's ready to answer your questions, mine, and everybody else's. So we're going to get started. Bill, if you've listened to a couple of these, you may know that we often ask people how they got involved in technology in the first place. Your first introduction to either technology or to VoIP or telephony or any of that stuff. You want to share any of that with us?
Sure. Yeah, technology. I came at voice over IP not from the telephony side of things, but more from the data side. Working through computer engineering in college and getting into IT. And in IT, I found a niche in voice over IP. Came to sort of love the idea of unified communications. And here I am today. This is what I call my home, the voice over IP realm.
Okay, and the reason you're here, at least what attracted me, what attracted you to my attention, my radar, was the Google Voice to SIP gateway, and that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So I guess my first question on that would be, what possessed you to do that? You must have had some love for XMPP, SIP, or Google Voice.
Not, well, no great love for XMPP, to tell you the truth. So back in, I guess it was 2010, I think FreeSwitch was the first of the open source projects to make a working connector to Google Voice. And that was cool, but FreeSwitch wasn't as widely used at that time as Asterisk. And a lot of Asterisk users were kind of clamoring for the opportunity to connect to Google Voice natively, using a voice over IP type of connection, rather than there was more of a callback method, like we initiate a call out to Google Voice, it calls us back over a PSTN line. In 2011, that technology was maturing more, And the Google Voice Gateway came about, I guess it was about October, November of 2011. I think at the time the module for Asterisk was still a bit immature, but both FreeSwitch and then Yate, the Yate open source server, had very good, very stable connectors to Google Voice. And so I developed the Google Voice Gateway based on Yate, and it first offered it in the PBX in a Flash forum for other Asterisk enthusiasts to connect to Google Voice using a SIP connection. And from that point, I thought at first it would be a small project, that some other Asterisk users would enjoy it, and it turns out it became very popular with those using IP phones or ATAs. And so that's the primary use today, is folks with IP phones or ATAs connecting directly to Google Voice.
And it's no secret that, and now I can't remember their name, the hardware box, help me out.
ObiHi.
ObiHi, wow, little hole in the memory there. That ObiHi has been doing that for, well, probably since the same time frame, pretty much. I think the question that comes to mind very often in everyone's mind is that Google had announced pretty much the death of the connection of XMPP with Google Voice. By the way, before I even get to that, you already know what the question is, but I recall that Dan York published a thing saying that, in fact, there were SIP URIs you could call directly to talk to Google Voice, if I'm not mistaken. Am I remembering that right? Can anybody confirm that? There was some connection, inherent connection with SIP, and then it lasted like 2 days, and then he wrote back and said it's dead. Looks like Tim, you had a comment?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say that it vanished within a couple of days. It seemed like an accidental config mistake on somebody's part, rather than a deliberate feature.
Right. But I mean, obviously that was the need that Bill just mentioned, which is that as soon as, you know, anybody who is regular here or anybody who's into this space at all, I think the first thing that comes to your mind is, how do we talk SIP to this thing? And that's been true of Hangouts too, by the way. So I don't know what conclusions we need to take from the fact that Google just doesn't like to connect to SIP for whatever reason, but they have burned that bridge as they came to it, so to speak. So Bill has kindly provided a system to do it. By the way, we should give the URL. What's your preferred URL for this, Bill, to sign up?
Sure. Our website is simonics.com, SIMONICS.com.
And right now, the way things are working, last I saw anyway, there is a very, very modest setup charge, and then that's it, right?
That's all. Really, the service is not extremely expensive to run. And in the past, I actually ran it for 3 years from 2011 until 2014 on a donations-only basis. And many kind donors helped to cover the operations costs of several gateway servers and bandwidth charges, and in fact our CNAM, caller name lookup feature, all with donations. But moving forward, I decided to have a modest setup fee, just to kind of cover things up front. You pay once, and then you can use it for the lifetime of the service or the lifetime of Google Voice allowing us to connect to their service. So this is a question that comes up quite frequently, is how long will this last? And you commented earlier about sort of the mystery that is Google and Google Voice, and I agree. I have no insider knowledge. We're doing just the same as ObiHi is doing. I don't believe that they have any particular insider knowledge either. The only knowledge that we have is that Google was concerned about the insecure login method previously used for us to connect to Google Chat XMPP. Now we use the OAuth 2 token mechanism, and this has received Google's approval.
Okay, I'm going to put up a slide. This is actually just a simple screen share of the page that talks about this and the features.
That's it.
And because actually, as insiders, we're all talking about this and we all know what we're talking about. But in fact, if somebody just happens to tune into this and has a Google Voice account, they may not have any idea what we're actually referring to. And what we're talking about is connecting a SIP phone, in other words, an endpoint, we call them, or you mentioned ATA, I can never remember what that stands for, but it's a box that connects a normal phone to, it turns it into SIP and will talk to servers. So it'll talk, maybe you have a company PBX or something. Well, with OB-High or with this service from Simon Telephonics, you can connect to your Google Voice account. And it makes a huge difference. It's really excellent. So I don't know if you should go through these. You mentioned CNAM, which is on incoming, caller ID name. You
Sure.
can route your Google device to any SIP URI, which means that if you have an office number that is a SIP URI, meaning my name at mycompany.com, you could actually forward your Google Voice number to that to your PBX, basically.
That's
ATA
correct.
is
Right.
Lauren says ATA, analog telephony adapter. Those are it's such an old concept. I couldn't remember what it was. Thank you, Lauren. Anyway, Bill, go ahead. Your comments on the feature set here that we're looking at, if you like.
Sure. I think that the feature set that we offer is geared toward the casual user or toward the hacker. You know, I think the hackers might like the SIP URI routing, but if you just want to have an IP phone, you want to go and buy an off-the-shelf Cisco Linksys or a Polycom phone or a E-Link or some phone, you receive after you sign up for the Google Voice Gateway service a username, a password, and a server to connect to. And in most devices, it's easy enough to figure out where to plug that information in and immediately be connected. If you want to do more with it, you want to route to a SIP URI, you want to connect multiple SIP devices to the service, you can do that as well. So we provide sort of a feature set for everybody. The caller ID name, about just simply because whenever you receive calls from Google Voice, there is never a CNAM associated with it, only the number. So we partner with a CNAM provider to inject that in on incoming calls if it's available. And that's also made this service somewhat popular, actually, with OB-High users. Even though they could connect to Google Voice natively with their devices, some of them have chosen to use our service because we add these extra features on.
Someone just asked in IRC if you hear a relay click when you make a call on the ATA. I don't know if that's even a serious question because I haven't had an ATA in my life ever. Never
A
owned
relay click.
Do they have relays?
I don't know. I haven't heard any sort of noises. Well, I suppose. I haven't noticed it myself.
Does anybody remember those Sipera phones that have become Linksys? Because they used to make ATAs, and they were very popular ATAs. But they made that phone, which turned into Linksys, and they've got to be available for $5 on eBay or someplace now. That's a great phone, and it would be great for use with this gateway. Really excellent. Lauren says, I make a lot of calls on OB110 and never heard the click. You know, I have an OB sitting right over here, but I haven't hooked it up because I don't have an analog phone in the house. Terrible to say. And you can't find them, by the way, anywhere now. It's very hard to find them. You'd have to go to a junk shop or something.
Now,
Sure.
I have my usual question, which comes about because I actually have an OB, one of their IP phones, sitting over here. And I had heard tell that Google Voice now will support, I think it was Opus, and that OB have actually implemented Opus in their not the ATAs, but in the IP phones. Do you have any knowledge of this?
I don't have any knowledge of that. I'll look into that. That's very interesting information. Our gateways, we really have a very limited codec selection, either G711 MULA or GSM. The reason for that limited selection is, well, one is efficiency. So far, Google Voice has only offered native G711 as its codec. So to avoid transcoding, that's what we use on our end as well. GSM came about because some users, including myself, I'm on this crummy DSL connection with low bandwidth, needed something a little bit more passable, a little bit more compressed, and so we offered GSM as well. And the transcoding cost on the servers is minimal for that. Opus sounds like a good option. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, and apparently, so if you're calling, between two Google Voice numbers, you're not going PSTN. It's basically an on-net call, and you can do great things, which is wonderful for podcasters and the like who want to sustain their audio quality.
By the way, you're not the voice of Bill Simon. So, in the truth of advertising part, Michael, when you speak, you should probably switch back. Tim, did you have a comment on the Opus? Because you may know something about it. Opus and Google Voice.
I don't actually. I'd be, yeah, interesting. I wonder how that plays out actually. I mean, generally, it's not worth going to Opus unless you can get Opus all the way from one end to the other. If you're going to transcode to GSM in the middle or 711 or something, you might as well. Mostly, you might as well go all the way like that. The only exception is because its error correction is really good. So if you're somewhere where you think you might reasonably expect to drop like 10% of packets, then actually you might do better with Opus. But that's pretty unusual, one hopes.
If anybody remembers which Astricon Chris DeBona gave the keynote, it was either Phoenix or one of the, I think it was with Phoenix or Denver. What was funny about that is that I spoke to him afterwards, and I asked him about Google Voice, and he says, Google Voice, that's probably like, I think there's one guy working on that. So I don't know if that's even possible, but ironically, the origin of Google Voice wasn't that Craig Walker and his Grand Central? Yeah. Who's been on several times.
That's right.
So that's kind of funny. There were more people working on it when Craig was with it.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't rule out Google and Voice though, because as opposed to Google Voice, because if you look in the adverts, which one I do, you'll see that Nest, which is a Google company, Nest Labs, is looking to recruit audio engineers. Presumably they're going to do the same thing as Amazon's, whatever it is, Spy in the Living Room. What's it called? Athena or something.
Mm-hmm.
What is it called?
Alexia.
Alexia. There you go.
Or is dyslexia?
Slightly, yes.
Anorexia.
Slightly less threatening than the goddess of wisdom, but still fairly scary. Anyway.
So is this going to be like, you walk into the living room and go, I want 70 degrees. Is that what they're looking for?
I think you're going to have to say, okay, Nest first.
Okay, Nest, give me 70 degrees in here. Yeah, something about the whole Nest concept is unattractive to me, but that's me. Anyway, all right, so with the understanding, Bill, that if Google tomorrow says, well, that's it, and pulls that big switch, of course, that'll be the end. So that's a condition.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a condition that we all have to accept.
It's sort of built in, and if you pay your $6 up front and you get even a few months of use out of it, I'd say you've done pretty well. Most people, I think, will get more than just a few months of use out of it. So, I'd say there's some small risk in Google pulling the plug. But I understand that there are Google employees that really enjoy the ObiHi devices and use them, and that may keep this whole connection thing alive for quite some time, as long as ObiHi is in the picture and still doing their thing.
They must be lobbying too, actually. But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and I didn't hesitate for a second. I figured even if it was worth a month of the kind of testing and fooling around that I do, was already worth $6. How many lattes do you get at Starbucks for $6? One and a half or something. Not even, right? So that's a pretty reasonable cost.
Hey, and the support is added on for free, but only to a certain extent. And I get lots of people that ask me about all kinds of different SIP devices, and there's many SIP devices as there are grains of sand on the beach. Sure. So I'll do my best to help you get your SIP device configured. But for the most part, you're on your own, or chat with the community first and see if you can get it figured out before asking me, because I've just got a small number of devices here in my lab.
Yeah,
One of the other, I'm sorry, Tim, I just wanted to slide in because he mentioned support, that one of the reasons that I invited you, Bill, was because I had a question. I know that my first contact was actually support. And I asked a question. I don't remember what the problem was or what I was asking, but the answer came within a couple of hours. So I was so impressed, I said, I've got to have this guy on. Go ahead, Tim.
I was going to kind of delve into the politics of it slightly in the sense of, do you get the feeling that the thing that's running at the other end of this is Yate? So is the reason that Yate works really well with it because actually Yate is on both ends of the wire, or is that just vicious speculation on my part?
I don't know. It could be speculation, but I do believe you were right. I remember during the time when Google had inadvertently left those SIP endpoints open that we discussed earlier in the call, that some folks investigating that determined that it was Yate server running on Google's network. Well, I don't know whether it has anything to do with our compatibility being so good or not, but it could be. It could well be.
What a shame that Diana isn't with us.
I know, yeah, I'd love to hear her comments, but the reason that I chose Yate was because, and Diana would probably be pleased to hear this. It's a very configurable platform, and it's very useful. We can cut out a lot of the, XMPP is a very chatty protocol. We can cut out a lot of the unnecessary parts of that, a lot of the unnecessary features that generally come with open source VoIP engines, just to do the bare minimum. We're doing interop between SIP and Google XMPP, and doing it well. That's the whole idea.
Incidentally, well, kind of an aside, didn't Diana work with or for Google at some point? Does anybody remember that? Seems to me she mentioned something about it.
Yeah, she certainly mentioned that she was working for Google.
Well, there you go. It all comes out on the VUC. Anybody have any questions? IRC, the VUC channel, there's been some comments, but I don't see any questions yet, except for the relay chatter question, which I think may have been a joke, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I should really...
I was actually wondering what's the nature of support stuff that you get beyond configuring SIP stuff, and you must have experienced, almost all of us come up from the grassroots of the Asterisk VoIP world, FreeSwitch world, etc. You must have experienced some kind of interesting stuff in that realm. Anything you can share?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think most of the questions are what I would call the very common VoIP problems questions. I get one-way audio, or I don't receive my incoming calls. It's typically because your firewall or your NAT is closing the connection and calls can't come in. You can still make outgoing calls. So I work with folks. We offer TLS and TCP transports for the gateway. Some folks have a hard time with UDP. I say let's switch to TCP. Let's use that instead. It keeps the session alive, and they have better results. Some folks have connected Cisco Cube, the unified border element with their Cisco router that acts as an SBC to the service. That was an interesting challenge. I don't know much about that, but they made it work. Folks have used it for their labs, just for basically free SIP trunking to run experiments, or to have something to fall back on if they need a SIP trunk for such purposes. Yeah, mostly the common stuff. I try to put the common questions or the FAQ into an FAQ section on our site so that it's not necessary to open support tickets. But yeah, nothing that comes to my mind that's terribly unusual.
A couple of questions here in IRC, Bill. I think I know the answer to this. Jungle Boogie asks, can you configure it with BRIA for smartphones? BRIA for smartphones. If you mean can you configure it with BRIA as a... What is BRIA for smartphones, first of all? Is that something I haven't heard of? Jungle Boogie.
Well, that's just the SIP client. Yeah, I'm familiar with BRIA, the SIP client. It's the new name of the old X-Lite client, right? So if it's a SIP client, it should work just fine. Yeah.
Well, if it's Oh, it's Bria that you put on smartphone. Bria, meaning like Bria Android and Bria iOS? Is that what you mean? Okay, he says yes. All right. So yeah, definitely. There's no reason why you couldn't configure it,
Yeah.
Bill, right?
Absolutely.
Any SIP client, anything
Yeah,
that's
like I said,
SIP.
people use any SIP client. Like I said, anywhere from Cisco Cube to your common Cisco Linksys entry-level VoIP phone, anything.
Or you can have your PBX register, for that matter, right?
Sure, asterisk. Yeah, we do have some extra instructions in place for asterisk, offering secure inbound connections. Most providers will not authenticate back to a PBX, but I've configured the Google Voice Gateway to authenticate back to your PBX if you like, and that way you can whitelist based on authentication rather than just based on IP.
Yeah, I think I remember something on forum post or something I saw that floated by my eyes about not having to put insecure equals very or whatever those instructions. That was a while back, but
right? Exactly.
So yeah, that's an excellent thing. There was a question before that, which was, oh yeah, Lauren's asking about your day job and whether the consulting service, because your site mentions consulting services. Are you consulting at the moment?
I'm not taking any new clients right now. I'm in full-time employment, and so most of my work with the Google Voice Gateway comes during breaks, weekends, evenings, that kind of thing. But I appreciate the question anyway, and perhaps again in the future. It's a lot to juggle, but it's enjoyable.
Well, I think this is a pretty good example of a project that shows a certain level of confidence in that area, and I'm sure that's part of the reason you did it. It's obviously not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for you, so it must be that.
Yeah, you see, charging $6 per connection one-time fee isn't going to make me rich, but the idea, though, is just simply to mostly cover costs and maybe have an extra latte or two here and there.
Well, I hope it is covering costs. Any other questions from anywhere? Any other questions from anywhere? I'm looking at, well, you got a lot of familiar faces, not faces, but URIs on, or SIP URIs on ZipDX. Nobody there has a question? You can *6 will toggle your mute state if you want to ask a question. Otherwise, my eyes move over to the IRC board. I don't see any questions there either.
Incidentally, since Bill is joined via ZipDX and also via SIP URI, he's joining in wideband even though he's not in the Hangout, which is lovely, and we appreciate the effort.
Cool.
True. And the sync difference, the lag is not actually that huge. I've actually gone from the voice of slide to Bill Live a couple of times. I didn't want it to be too confusing, but it's actually a little like watching it's like watching a Dracula movie in Italian.
Great.
Okay, no, but I didn't mean the imagery, obviously. I meant the lag
Sure.
of the overdubbed, anyway. Or an Italian, actually, I meant an Italian Dracula movie dubbed in English would be, how they go, well, you are my uncle. All right. Anything else at all? Going once. Well, we managed to do 31 minutes. That's pretty good.
So did you know an interesting weird fact about dubbing in Germany, which is that the same actor does the voice acting for the same Hollywood star. So if you get, if you spot, Harrison Ford very early on, and you get to be his voice double in Germany when he's playing in some art house movie, and you capture that ground, then you get to be his voice double throughout his entire career. So this is the bizarre luck of the draw that if you pick on somebody who turned out to be really famous early on, then you get, you're made for life, which I found deeply surreal. But there you go. Apparently this is the thing. Nothing to do with what we're supposed to be talking about.
Well, close enough.
Interesting subject, nonetheless. I can imagine a voice actor in Germany doing Sean Connery in Russian with a Scottish accent in German. It's girl. I'm going to shut up. I'm confusing myself.
All right. Speaking of confusing, Lauren, in the IRC, if I read this, if I can get through this without stuttering, I'm not sure I understand the question actually. But here it is. Lauren says, not a Google Voice user, but I follow the endless iterations in the various */free PBX forums on keeping things working. The Symantec gateway experience these periodics. I think he meant does the gateway experience these periodic interruptions, or does Yate take care of the bulk of these issues? I'm not sure which issues, because if Google Voice dies, of course, Yate can't do anything about that. But anyway, interruptions, Simon, if you have a Bill, sorry, if you have a comment on that, anyway. The service.
Yeah, we haven't seen them. Yeah, honestly, we haven't seen them. There will be interruptions from time to time. I set up redundant gateways, and occasionally you have network connectivity issues. I'm not promising 5 nines or 4 nines. Maybe we got 3 nines going as far as if we're lucky some days. But the truth is that I think that other people, whenever we're looking at Asterisk, there's been a lot of experimentation with the Motif module, which is the one that connects to Google Voice. Some folks have done some great work injecting the OAuth 2 login mechanism into that module, so that from home, or from your workplace, if you're integrating with Google Voice, you can use the more secure login method. There have been some trials and errors with that. I know that that's been tricky to get working. Yate is quite stable. It's a good stable platform, and so we're very happy about that. Haven't had to do any sort of modifications to keep up with changes on Google. I don't think they've changed their XMPP implementation anytime recently.
In theory, really, Google shouldn't be going up and down daily like a site that's overrun. I mean, they have a huge network, and
sure,
they would be as robust as anybody you can think of. Google, Amazon, maybe Microsoft, maybe Apple, pretty good. Those are the networks that I have used very often over the years, and I mean mostly they're pretty dependable. So I'm looking to see if any other questions. I don't see questions in IRC. Again, *6 if you want to unmute and say something in ZipDX. I will mention that I tried another SIP gateway to Google Voice not that long ago. Someone mentioned it to me on Google+, and I went and tried it. I don't think there was any cost associated with it, but it was on. I got it to work like one time, and then it was off. And then the other person said, well, it's still working for me, but then it went off for him the next day, and I'm not sure what this was based on, but it wasn't really working that fantastic, and it never did work again, and it had a robotic voice that was going, there's a problem connected to your Google account, and so on. Which reminds me, you had the previous version, Bill, was a version that didn't use OAuth 2 or whatever. Is that what the previous version that you talk about on the site was?
Right, and exactly, the issue with that was that it used essentially plain text login over their SSL encrypted XMPP client, but still we had to keep people's credentials on hand to perform those logins, which I was never a fan of that. It worked. I was glad when they announced the OAuth 2, but it did take some time to figure out the way to integrate that into the engine. So that was some of the delay between the time that Google announced OAuth 2 logins for chat and when we got to where we were.
It's funny because Andy Smith, who's with us on the call, I was telling him that I was trying to connect to Google with something, I don't remember what, and Google sent me a warning saying that a client, I was using an insecure client trying to connect to their services. This was some really legitimate thing. It's something I knew about. And his reflection was, he translated, you seem to be using an insecure app or client to connect to Google with what? Do you remember what you said, Andy?
I think it was something along the lines of we cannot actually glean any information from your device, therefore we don't wish you to use it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that was kind of funny. I can't quite remember what it was I was trying to do, but whatever it was, I kind of gave up. By the way, Google, in their email, well, first of all, Google Domains. I have a domain at Google. I like to test these services, so I tested Google Domains. You can register a domain, and they don't have SMTP service, or if they do, it doesn't work to send mail. Long story short, and the relationship to our current topic with OAuth 2 and securing, connecting securely to Google is that they don't allow you to connect. They don't give you the option to connect in that way unless you use two-step authentication. Now, don't get me started, but two-step authentication may be very secure and wonderful, but what a pain in the ass. I mean, why would you want to have something that calls you and sends you a message every time? So anyway, that's enough of that. Point is that Google, I don't like Google forcing us to use two-step authentication. And if it ever gets to the point where they go, well, now you have to use it or you can't use our account, then I'm going to just move everything off because I do what I want, and you know, you take the risks and you spend your money and you take your chances, or however that expression goes. Anyway, so I feel your pain.
In defense of Google on that one, they have I think their issue there is that they need to be
get your information.
No, well, that also, but I think in fairness to them, I think the issue is that in trying to sell Google for Business, they don't want a constant plethora of people saying, "I've had my account hacked."
Right.
And you know, they need a clean image on that, and they need to have tried to do what is current best practice, and they want to encourage you to do current best practice. And I mean, the recent thing in WebRTC, which is that come turn of the year, WebRTC, you won't be able to make calls with Chrome from WebRTC unless the domain you're loading the JavaScript from is HTTPS. So you will only be able to run it. You'll only be able to run WebRTC from a quote secure site. And that, you know, it's the same sort of thing. They don't want people saying, "Oh, well, I was conned into opening my CAM by somebody who we can't trace now." So there's, you know, they've got a reputation to try and protect, and they don't make any money off you directly. So,
yeah,
I mean, I kind of, you know, I actually agree with you. I mean, I got locked out of my Google account while I was at Burning Man because I was building a mobile network, and then I had to use a mobile network in order to get the auth credentials, in order to log in and get the details that I needed. So I actually got myself locked into this kind of deadlock of needing the credentials in order to build the network, in order to get the credentials. So I just gave up and looked some other way. But so yeah, I'm not a huge fan of two-factor authentication in some circumstances, but in principle, I think it's something we should encourage in one way or another. But you have to find the right two-factor device, basically, for your usage.
I like the idea of the fob. I've never seen one, and I don't own one. But this idea of a device that it's hardware that you can carry. Of course, if you forgot it someplace, you're screwed, obviously. But,
I have two fobs. I agree.
How do you like that?
So I liked them a lot initially, and then they started upgrading. So the original fob I had was, I guess it was was it RSA? I've forgotten what they were called now. The FOBs Secure ID, were they called?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That everybody had, and that was just like you pressed a single button and it would give you 6 digits, and you type those in and you were done. That was fine, and then they upgraded them so that you had to put in a PIN. So you now have a proper keypad, and you put a PIN in to unleash the token, and it gives you 6 digits, which you then type in. And that started to be annoying, but it's not as annoying as the emulation of them on phones. The emulation of that process on a phone turns out to be the most irritating thing I've ever used, probably. So anyway, little rant over there.
And I'm just looking at their site, because I didn't realize that was an RSA thing, which is now EMC, I guess. And yeah, so they're doing it on. How does it work on phones? I mean,
Well, I know if Mr. Bodie was here, he'd be champing at the bit and talking about authentication as a service from your mobile phone operator. So you've got your phone. It's already logged in and authenticated using sophisticated cryptographics. So why do you need any further authentication? You just take the authentication from the mobile phone operator.
Because somebody stole your phone.
Okay.
Moreover, I am not.
Else.
I am not trusting of my mobile phone operator in that fashion.
I trust mine.
I do not have a Move phone.
I do, and I trust mine.
Let me just respond quickly to what Tim said, because I understand, of course I understand what they're trying to do, and that's all very well and good. I think we do need to have the decision of whether to use a two-step. Two-step would be interesting to me, but I don't get it. I mean, what if you don't have any connectivity and you're trying to do something? Well, of course, I guess let me think about this. If you don't have any connectivity, you're not trying to do anything online, so what difference does it make? I don't know. There's just that step. There has to be a better way, and I'm sure there will be soon. So with that, anything further for Bill here because he's got other stuff to do probably in life. And Fred, why do you keep typing in authenticator? We got it.
It works if you don't have connectivity. So let's say you want to access SSH on something and you don't have connectivity. Well, you can use authenticator because it works based on the ISO that works on time passed based on a time sync.
Oh, well, I'll have to look into that then. That's interesting, because that was one of my main things. I thought that two-step was an SMS, a text, an SMS, or I don't know what.
It's an alternate channel.
So what happens here is on this one, let's say, and I love it on this one. So Google does it on Gmail. You can do it on. I use it for Stripe, which we do for payments here at Bakery and also at Palmer. I use it for GitHub. But when you sync it, you're syncing with their account and your account. You sync it at the same point. So now you have at the same hardware clock. You now have a sync. So now, based on that, the code just automatically knows what numbers to go next. So based on your phone, it's the same principle of a fob. So based on your phone, you just look at it and you go, okay, well, now it's this. So you don't need connectivity to the internet or anything like that. And you just connect to it and go. So it would work perfectly at Burning Man when you're switching mobile signals, because you just need your phone and it's going to sync up anytime. It works perfectly for me here because for a long time I didn't have cell signal at the bakery, so I couldn't use any two-factor. And so Authenticator was it.
Interesting. Well, I didn't know that. I'll have to look at that more closely, because after my long rant, but it's true that it's just another step, and we're all a little lazy, I think, in that aspect. I just recently changed a couple of my passwords that were just so obvious. I'm going like, how come nobody's even broken into this account after these couple of years of this stupid password? It wasn't like 1, 2, 3, 4 or anything, but it was almost that bad. And I'm looking at a couple of Twitter accounts I don't care that much about, and I'm looking at them going, how come nobody's broken into this account yet, other than the fact that it's insignificant and nobody cares, with 35 people following it or whatever. But still, you'd think they'd be sweeping around trying to get into every account they can to spam. Anyway, we're way off topic here now. Anything further for Bill and the Google Voice SIP gateway, which I highly recommend you check into, by the way. And we've given the URL before, but I'm going to give it to you again. Go to Symantix.com, and there you will see a link to the Google Voice Gateway. Check that out. Very modest fee. This isn't an ad or anything, but I did this, and I, opened the drawer and got all my spare change together and had like 6 something, whatever it is that you have to put in. It's nothing to play around with this, and it has worked flawlessly since then. So I was on vacation. It was very, very handy. By the way, and this is totally related, not one of my usual digressions, T-Mobile has now instituted a policy that Tim Panton and I were slightly complaining about earlier, which is that you can no longer keep a number over a year. The number will expire if you don't keep pumping money into it. That number will expire after a couple of months, according to T-Mobile. So this is prepaid. I mean, when you're going to the U.S. once a year, like I do. So my number will now change every year. So what's the solution? Give out the Google Voice number. Forward it to the cell when you're in the United States. Forward it to the SIP gateway when you're not. And it rings on my desk phone and on my other phone, which is a SIP phone also, but it's in the decked phone in the house. Solution. Thank you, Bill, for that solution. Perfect.
Very cool. I'm glad you find it useful.
It is. Let's just hope it works next year. That won't be on you if it doesn't, obviously. All right. Since I haven't seen anybody popping up on any of the screens with any questions, we'll let you go, Bill. Thank you for being a guest, and thank you for the service. It's a terrific idea.
Appreciate you having me on this show. It's been fun talking about the service. Welcome folks to come check it out. Hey, if you spend your $6 and you really hate it, I'll give it back to you. No problem. just give it a try. I think you'll like it.
And I totally believe what you just said. So go for it. Check it out. If you don't like it, no, my password wasn't password, at least not with a capital P, phone buff. I fooled you, didn't I? No, they were 4 letters, 4 digits, but it was a real stupid password. Anyway, that's it for this week. We're going to move to the mature audiences section right about now, and we will talk to you next week. Next week is... What is next week? Michael, you remember?
No, I don't think we have it committed next week, do we? Let's see.
Well, I'm going to go right now live to
I'll ask Google.
vuc.me/topics. I think there is, and I think it might be on you.
I'm looking at the calendar.
vuc.me/topics.
No, it's an Astricon thing. That's it. It's an Astricon last minute update.
Astricon last minute update, VUC 560. All right, we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it. You are the folks who make this happen. Thank you.